This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. 19 kidney patients die following closure of Renal Hospital.
Hamas says terror attack on Israel will be repeated.
500 people expected to cross into Egypt today.
Chief executive officials of cough syrup making company jailed.
President Stelmeier expressed shame for colonial atrocities in Tanzania.
President Biden urges pause in hostilities for hostage release.
Now the rest of our stories. 19 kidney patients have died since Ghana's largest renal center closed in May due to funding difficulties, the president of the country's Renal Patients Association said. Kofi Bafo Ahenkora made the disclosure as Health Minister Kwaku Ageman Manu was due to meet management of Kolbo Teaching Hospital in the capital, Accra, where the unit is based. The minister is looking at ways to reopen the unit, which was treating 200 patients when it closed 5 months ago. Mr. Akenkora said it had closed because of a shortage of drugs. Dialysis is only available at 3 public health institutions in Ghana, where patients are charged about $190 per week for 3 sessions. Mr. Akenkora said the patients had died because they were unable to access treatment at private dialysis centers, which charge more.
Uganda's cabinet has approved a bill allowing the state-owned oil company Uganda National Oil Company to source and supply oil to the domestic market. If approved by Parliament, the bill will end the current arrangement of importing oil through Kenyan distributors. Energy Minister Ruth Nankaribwa on Tuesday said that the change aims to improve the security of supply of petroleum products to the country. She criticized the existing arrangement with Kenya, saying that it exposed Uganda to occasional supply vulnerabilities where Ugandan oil marketing companies were considered secondary whenever there were supply disruptions, subsequently raising oil prices in Uganda. Currently, Uganda, a landlocked country, imports more than 90% of its fuel through Kenya's Mombasa port and the remainder through Tanzania's Dar es Salaam port. According to Ms. Nankabiwa, the energy minister also announced that Uganda has reached a deal with Bahrain Energy Company, Vital Bahrain EC, under which the Bahrain company will finance the Uganda National Oil Company's move to source and supply oil. She also said that Uganda will shore up its fuel stocks in Tanzania and domestically, including by constructing a storage facility in Mpigi in central Uganda.
The president of Zimbabwe Miners Federation, Henrietta Rushwaye, who is a relation of President Emerson Mnangagwa, has been convicted by a court of attempting to smuggle 6 kilograms of gold through the VIP route at the main international airport in the capital, Harare. 3 years ago, Ms. Rushwaye is not related by blood to Zimbabwe, said that the gold was worth more than $300,000. Rushwaye has pleaded not guilty. 2 Central Intelligence Organization's operatives who were charged with her were acquitted because of a lack of evidence, the press reports.
has become the latest opposition member to allegedly be abducted. Mr. Nagozuri, a member of the Citizens Coalition for Change, posted a video on Facebook showing a gun-toting man he said was chasing him. "I am being followed," the panting MP said on camera. He was later allegedly found naked in the bush north of the capital, Harare. The CCC says he was tortured and injected with an unknown substance. He is currently being treated for beatings he received from his captors. Mr. Ngaziore's experience is similar to that of former Harare opposition MP James Chidhakwa, who says he was abducted and tortured by unknown assailants last month. In early September, 2 CCC councillors-elect say they were abducted and released after being tortured. This follows a long pattern of the abduction of opposition politicians and human rights activists in Zimbabwe. The CCC describes the incident as an uptick in the harassment of its members following disputed elections in August. It blames state agents for the violence against its members. The ruling ZANU-PF party and the government dismissed the abductions, saying they are stage-managed in order to tarnish the government's image. Several hours after Mr. Ngadio's alleged abduction, police spokesperson Paul Nyati told BBC the police were yet to receive an official report.
A Ghanaian deacon who was abducted during a church service in South Africa's main city, Johannesburg, on Sunday has been freed. Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa has said the deacon, named by Ghanaian media as Elder Emmanuel Kudijo, was kidnapped when an armed gang stormed the Church of Pentecost, robbing the congregation of their valuables at gunpoint. High Commissioner Charles Owedu said on X, formerly Twitter, that the deacon, whom he did not name, was freed on Tuesday night and was now with his family. He did not give details of how the cleric was freed. This was the latest in a spate of robberies of churches, mosques, and temples in South Africa. The government has promised to take steps to ensure the safety of worshippers in a country that has one of the highest crime rates in the world.
South Africans are in for tougher times after Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana warned that taxes are likely to rise next year. Delivering his medium-term budget speech in Parliament, he cited lackluster economic growth, low revenue collection, and soaring interest costs on the national debt as reasons for the likely increase in taxes. The government will also forge ahead with cost-cutting measures, including reducing the size of its department, Mr. Godongwana added. He promised to protect critical services like health, policing, and education from spending cuts. But trade union and civil society groups warn that budget constraints will prevent the recruitment of new teachers and increase pressure on health services. The government bowed to pressure from social activists to again extend a monthly social relief grant given to more than 8 million people in financial difficulty. The monthly payment was first introduced in 2020 as a temporary measure to help people during COVID lockdowns.
A Hamas official has said that the organization would repeat the October 7 Israel terror attacks again and again until the country is destroyed. He emphasized that Israel has no place on our land. Ghazi Hamad, a member of the militant group's decision-making political bureau, issued the warning during an October 23rd Lebanese television interview republished by British outlets. He said that Hamas would replicate the attack that was carried on October 7, referred to by them as Operation Al-Qasr Flood. The Al-Qasr Flood is just the first time, and there will be a second, third, a fourth, because we have the determination, the resolve, and the capabilities to fight, Hamad said, adding that the Hamas is willing to pay the price. We are called a nation of martyrs and are proud to sacrifice martyrs. Hamad added, Israel is a country that has no place on our land. We must remove that country because it constitutes a security, military, and political catastrophe to the Arab and Islamic nations and must be finished. Hamad added, we are not ashamed to say this with full force. We must teach Israel a lesson, and we will do this again and again, stressing that Hamas' attack on Israel was justified. Hamad continued, the existence of Israel is what causes all that pain, blood, and tears. It is Israel, not us. We are the victims of the occupation. Therefore, nobody should blame us for the things we do. On October 7, October 10, everything we do is justified, he said. Israel's Shin Bet internal security recently released a video of a Hamas terrorist admitting that he slaughtered women as well as children hiding inside a safe room because their only mission was to kill everyone. Afterwards, we entered a house that was near us. We entered through the window. We checked the house and heard the sound of young children in the safe room. We shot at the safe room until we didn't hear noise anymore. Omar Sami Mazak Abu Rusha, a member of Hamas Nakba Special Forces, told the interrogator. He and his unit were eventually caught in a shootout with responding IDF soldiers. They surrendered after fighting for 10 minutes.
International humanitarian agency Medicine Sans Frontieres has announced that 22 of its staff members were able to leave Gaza on Wednesday. In a statement, the medical charity said its entire international staff that had been unable to leave the territory have now successfully crossed the Egypt border via the Rafah crossing. It added, a new team of international staff, including a specialized medical team, has already been identified and is ready to enter Gaza as soon as the situation allows, supporting the humanitarian and medical response. The agency said about 2 million Palestinians are still trapped in Gaza under shelling, including 300 Palestinian MSF staff and their families. More than 22,000 injured people remain in Gaza with limited access to health care. It added, many of our Palestinian colleagues continue to work and provide life-saving care in hospitals and across the Gaza Strip. While the most basic protections for hospitals and medical personnel are not guaranteed, MSF said.
In a briefing, the Israel Defense Forces spokesman Daniel Hagari said joint action of their ground, sea, and air forces had seen troops break through the forward Hamas perimeter of the northern Gaza Strip. He also said that guided by precise intelligence from the eliminate Muhammad Azza, a Hamas anti-tank commander. In a separate briefing, Israel's Brigadier General Isaac Cohen said the IDF's forces were now deep into the Gaza Strip. At the gates of Gaza City, he added.
Earlier today, Palestinians' biggest telecommunications provider, Paltel, announced a complete interruption of all communications and internet services in the Gaza Strip. It is the second such report since the start of Israel's ground operation in Gaza. The Paltel notification on social media said the cut off was due to international routes that were previously reconnected being cut off again. Global Network Monitor Net's blogs confirmed the new blackout, adding it would mean a total loss of telecommunications for most of the territory's more than 2 million residents. Those near Gaza's boundaries with Israel and Egypt might be able to pick up some signal if they have an international SIM card.
More people are expected to cross from Gaza into Egypt today after the Rafah crossing opened for the first time since the Israel-Hamas war erupted. Like yesterday, a list of some 500 names of people who are allowed to cross drawn up by Egypt will be posted on the crossing. More than 400 people were able to leave Gaza yesterday in a chaotic yet manageable fashion, he said. Some people who went to the Rafah crossing yesterday were unaware that if their names were not on the list, they would not be allowed to enter Egypt. Leaving Gaza is critical, especially for those who need medical care, as hospitals are running out of supplies and fighting continues.
Hezbollah has said on Thursday that it destroyed an Israeli drone flying over southern Lebanon with a surface-to-air missile. But a spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces, Daniel Hagari, said in a post on X that there was no damage to its remotely piloted aircraft. Hagari said Israeli forces attacked the squad that fired at their drone. This is the second time in a week that Hezbollah claims to have shot down an Israeli drone as border.
Brother of the country's de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, said the two met to review our close and strategic relations as well as the efforts to de-escalate tensions in the region. The meeting comes as a host of leaders in the Middle East have been sharply critical of Western support for Israel. Jordan, a major U.S. ally, removed its ambassador from Israel on Wednesday. Saudi Arabia had been in the process of normalizing relations with Israel, but has issued a series of condemnations of it in recent weeks. Last week, Saudi officials warned a delegation of U.S. senators that an Israeli ground invasion of Gaza would be extremely harmful. You're watching the International News on Atlantic Television Network. We will be back after this break.
from the lines across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-the-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
Welcome back. This is the Global News and this is the International News on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. All 10 Japanese nationals, along with their 8 Palestinian family members who wanted to leave Gaza, have been evacuated to Egypt. The top Japanese government spokesperson on Thursday, Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno, also told a press conference that one Japanese national living in Gaza has remained.
The boss and 3 other officials of an Indonesian firm whose cough syrup was linked to the death of over 200 children have been sentenced to jail. They were handed 2-year prison sentences and fined a 1 billion Indonesian rupiah each. The firms of toxic substances. The company's lawyer said they denied negligence and the firm was considering whether to appeal. Prosecutors had been seeking a prison sentence of 7 to 9 years for Afi Farmers chief executive Prestia Harap, and 7 years each for the other defendants. The public prosecutor said that between October 2021 and February 2022, the company received 2 batches of propylene glycol, which is used for making cough syrup. These batches contain 96% to 99% ethylene glycol. The prosecutor said both substances can be used as additives to solvents, while propylene glycol is non-toxic and widely used in medicines, cosmetics, and food. Ethylene glycol is toxic and used in paint, pens, and brake fluid. The company did not test the ingredients used in the cough syrup and instead relied on quality and safety certificates from its supplier, prosecutors said. Alpha Pharma's lawyer, Samsul Hidayat, told the BBC that Indonesia's drug regulator did not require drug makers to carry out rigorous testing of ingredients. The judge in the Kediri District Court, East Java, found the 4 defendants guilty of intentionally producing pharmaceutical goods that did not meet safety standards. The case comes as efforts grow worldwide to tighten the oversight of drug supply chains after the poisonings. Since 2022, more than 200 Indonesian children, most of whom were under the age of 5, have died of acute kidney injury linked to contaminated cough syrup. About 100 deaths have been reported in the Gambia and Uzbekistan. The World Health Organization has issued warnings about 6 cough syrups made in India and Indonesia.
Arvind Kejriwal, Delhi's chief minister and leader of the governing Aam Aadmi Party, is set to be questioned by India's Financial Crimes Agency. The Enforcement Directorate is investigating an alleged fraud case related to a now scraped liquor sale policy in the state. AAP leaders Manish Sisodia and Sanjay Singh have been arrested in the case. AAP has denied the allegations against its leaders and accused the federal government of political vendetta. But India's governing Bharatiya Janata Party has accused the AAP of indulging in corrupt practices for political gains. Questions of corruption are a sensitive matter for the Aam Aadmi Party, which emerged more than 10 years ago from a major movement against corruption, with Mr. Kejriwal described as an anti-corruption crusader. Hours before his questioning on Thursday, Mr. Kejriwal called the ED summons illegal and politically motivated, press reported. The notice was sent at the behest of the BJP. Notice was sent to ensure that I am unable to go for election campaigning in 4 states, he said, and asked the ED to withdraw the notice immediately. Security has been ramped up outside the ED office in the capital, as well as Rajghat, the memorial of India's independent equal policy. The policy was implemented by the AAP government in 2021 and was withdrawn less than a year later. Investigators alleged that it favored certain liquor dealers and that illicit gains were used by the AAP to fund a poll campaign, allegations that the AAP has strongly denied. In April, Mr. Kejriwal was questioned by the CBI for 9 hours in connection with the case. At the time, he had said that the entire case was fabricated and viewed to bring down his party. The AAP has been trying to position itself as a key opposition force to the BJP. Apart from being in power in Delhi and Punjab, it contested the election in Goa this year and plans to do so in 3 more states. The CBI and the ED report to the federal government headed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Many opposition leaders, including Mr. Kejriwal, have accused the BJP of using federal agencies to target them in the run-up to the general elections in 2024, an allegation the governing party denies. Reports say AAP has been planning future steps should Mr. Kejriwal be arrested. It will be decided by senior party leaders, but if the whole party is in jail, then the government and the party would run from jail. AAP leader Saurabh Bhardwaj told the media on Wednesday. In May, the ED had arrested Delhi's former health minister Satyendra Jain in a money laundering case. He is out on bail on health grounds. Mr. Sisodia, the same case last month. They remain in jail as their bail pleas have been rejected by courts. On Thursday, hours before Mr. Kejriwal was to be questioned, the ED searched Delhi Social Welfare Minister Raj Kumar Anand's house and 9 other places linked to him in a separate money laundering case.
The German president has expressed shame for the colonial atrocities his country inflicted on Tanzania. German forces killed almost 300,000 people during the Maji rebellion in the early 1990s, one of the bloodiest anti-colonial uprisings. President Frank-Walter Steinmeier was speaking at a museum in Songea where the uprising took place. I would like to ask for forgiveness for what Germans did for export. Tanzania was a part of German East Africa, which consisted of modern-day Rwanda, Burundi, and parts of Mozambique. President Steinmeier said he hoped Tanzania and Germany could work towards communal processing of the past. He promised to take these stories with me to Germany so that more people in my country will know about them. Germany has until recently had colonial amnesia, according to Jürgen Zimmerer, a history professor at the University of Hamburg. The brutality and the racism of this colonial empire was not understood in the German public. As part of the 3-day visit, the president met the descendants of one of the Maji leaders, Chief Songea Mbano, who was among those executed in 1906. He is now considered a national hero in Tanzania, and President Steinmeier told the family the German authorities would try to find his remains. Thousands of human remains were brought from German colonies, partly as trophies, but also for racist research. Professor Zimmer said there was almost no funding available to identify where these bones and skulls, which lie in various museums or institutions, actually came from. Some of the descendants of those killed have managed to locate them with the help of DNA tests. On Tuesday, after meeting President Samia Suluhu Hassan in Dar es Salaam, he promised that Germany would cooperate with Tanzania for the repatriation of cultural property. Tanzania historian Mohammed Said welcomed the president's apology, but told the press it did not go far enough. They decided to set farms on fire so people would run out of food and be able to fight. This is unacceptable. In today's world, they would be taken to court, he said. In 2021, Germany officially acknowledged committing genocide during its occupation of Namibia and announced financial aid worth more than 1.1 billion euros. The statement from Germany's president comes after King Charles acknowledged the abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against Kenyans during their independence struggle while on a visit to Nairobi. However, the British monarch did not deliver a formal apology, which would have to be decided by government ministers.
Austrian leaders have condemned an attack on the Jewish part of Vienna's Central Cemetery. Sometime between Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, a swastika was painted on a wall and a fire broke out at a ceremony hall. The head of the Jewish community in Austria, Oskar Deutsch, said it was frightening to see a swastika and the name of Hitler sprayed on the wall of a Jewish cemetery. He said the fire had damaged the foyer of the ceremonial hall. Austria's Chancellor Karl Nehammer strongly condemned the attack and promised to fight anti-Semitism with all political and legal means. Austrian President Alexander Van der Bellen said he was deeply shocked. He said the number of anti-Semitic incidents in Austria had increased significantly in recent weeks, and he demanded that they stop.
At least 14 Britons were killed in the Hamas attack on Israel. Another 3 Britons are still missing. The UK authorities are urgently working with the Israeli authorities to establish what's happened to them, and they are in contact with their families. Those killed include mother and daughters Leah Noya and Naher Sharabi, Nathaniel Young from London, who was serving in the Israeli army, and photographers Danny Darlington, father of 3, Bernard Cohen, also died in the Hamas attacks, as well as Jake Mariowe, who was working at the music festival. Soldier Youssef Gudelia and Manchester United fan Yoni Rapoport. The previous number known have been killed was 12. Several were Israeli-British dual nationals.
The UK Foreign Office says the first British nationals have passed through the Rafah border crossing from Gaza into Egypt. It did not say how many Britons had left the territory, but said a list of British nationals that want to leave Gaza had been agreed with Egyptian and Israeli authorities.
Hundreds of schools have announced that they will close today as violent winds lash southern England and the Channel Islands. Around 51 schools in Southampton, 4 in Isles of Wight, 224 in Devon, 22 in Cornwall, 9 in East Sussex, and 10 in Dorset are to close, along with all schools in Jersey. A further 30 in Cornwall and 2 in Dorset will be partially closed.
After a week of build-up, the Beatles will release what has been billed as their final song on Thursday. Called Now and Then, it has been 45 years in the making, with first bars written by John Lennon in 1978, and the song finally completed last year. All 4 Beatles feature on the track, which will be the last credited to Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starr. And in a full circle moment, it's been issued as a double A side single with their 1962 debut, Love Me Do. The release marks what could be the closing chapter for arguably the greatest band in rock history. In the UK, Now and Then will receive its first play on BBC Radio 2 and 6 Music at 2 p.m. GMT on Thursday. Simultaneously, the song will arrive on streaming services like Spotify.
You have zero shame. Do you honestly think this was a good idea with what's going on in the world? For someone keenly aware of current global issues, who describes himself as feminist and woke, there should have been a talk like, is this appropriate considering my position and what's going on in the world? One user said, while another wrote, well, that is that.
The U.S. president also speaks about the 239 people held captive by Hamas in the wake of its unprecedented attack on Israel on October 7th. We continue to hold in our hearts hundreds of families and loved ones, including small children and elderly. My administration continues to work around the clock to reunite those families. We are not going to give up, period. I am optimistic, but then I am an optimist.
U.S. President Joe Biden has been speaking about the opening of the Rafah border crossing. He says thanks to concerted Americans' leadership, safe passage for wounded Palestinians and foreign nationals has started. American citizens were able to exit today, he said, as part of the first group of probably more than 1,000, adding that the process will continue over the coming days. We're working non-stop to get Americans out of Gaza as soon as safely as possible, he says. The opening of the crossing is a result of intense and urgent diplomacy with partners in the region, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Egyptian President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi, Biden says. The president also thanks Qatar, a country that has worked so closely with us to support negotiations and facilitate the departure of citizens. On the entry of aid into Gaza, Biden says the number of trucks continues to increase significantly, but we still have a long way to go.
U.S. President Joe Biden has called for a pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas to follow the release of hostages. He was responding to a woman in the audience at a campaign event in Minnesota who urged him to call for a ceasefire. I think we need a pause. A pause means give time to get the prisoners out, he said. The White House later clarified that the president was referring to humanitarian aid and the 240 hostages being held by Hamas.
A woman at the campaign event in Minnesota on Wednesday confronted Joe Biden demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. Mr. President, you are about Jewish people. Am I a rabbi? I need you to call for a ceasefire right now. A woman who later identified herself to reporters as Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg said, interrupting Biden mid-speech. Even as the audience tried to drown her out, Biden responded, I think we need a pause. A pause means give time to get the prisoners out. The White House later clarified that the president was referring to the 240 hostages being held by Hamas. Rosenberg was escorted out by security while singing ceasefire now, but Biden went on to say that the situation is incredibly complicated for both Israelis as well as the Muslim world. I supported a two-state solution I have from the very beginning, he added. The fact of the matter is that Hamas is a terrorist organization, a flat-out terrorist organization.
The U.S. House of Representatives have declined to formally censure Democratic Rep. Rashida Tlaib after she spoke at a rally that called for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Far-right Republican Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene has accused Tlaib of anti-Semitic activity, sympathizing with terrorist organizations, and leading an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol complex. But the House rejected the motion on Wednesday evening in a bipartisan 222 to 186 vote. In a statement, Tlaib, who is a Muslim, called the resolution deeply Islamophobic. I will continue to work for a just and lasting peace that upholds the human rights and dignity of all people and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear or violence.
Addressing a said panel alongside the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary on Tuesday, Director Christopher Gray said the terror threat to Americans had been elevated throughout 2023, but after 7 October Hamas attacks on Israel, it had risen to a whole other level. It is a concern shared by both. It is a concern shared by both sides of the Atlantic, with the UK Prime Minister chanting. What was that? Get down on it. Crisis meeting on Monday attended the MI the MI5 and counterterrorism policing to discuss how to mitigate the increased threat of terrorism. The UK government suspects Iranian agents may be actively stoking unrest amongst the recent pro-Palestinian protests in British cities. Currently, the UK national terror threat level set by the Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre remains unchanged and substantiated, meaning a terrorist attack is thought likely. But the surge in violence in the Middle East has led counterterrorism officials to worry about two areas of increased threat. One of those comes from the growing international outrage at the very high level of civilian casualties amongst Palestinians caused by Israel's air and artillery strikes on Gaza, as it seeks to eliminate Hamas' fighting capabilities. The other is the risk extremist group could be inspired by the Hamas-led attacks on Israel on 7th of October. The FBI director told senators those actions will serve as an inspiration, the likes of which we haven't seen since ISIS launched its so-called caliphate. Since ISIS launched its so-called caliphate years ago.
A student in an elite New York college has been held in jail after appearing in court accused of posting violent threats against Jewish students. Prosecutors say Patrick Dye, 21, made threats to bring a gun to the Cornell University campus and rape Jewish women and behead any Jewish babies. The engineering student appeared in court in an orange jumpsuit. He has been charged with posting threats to kill or injure another using interstate communications. The crime is punishable by up to 5 years in prison. Mr. Dye's mother was in the court in Syracuse, New York State, on Wednesday afternoon. She leaned forward in an apparent attempt to make eye contact with her son, according to local media. Prosecutor Godfrey Brown asked that Mr. Dye be remanded into custody, noting that he had visited a campus dining hall before allegedly posting threats to shoot up the area. Mr. Dye waived his rights to a bail-bearing hearing. The Cornell Daily Sun, the college newspaper, first reported on a series of anti-Semitic comments left on the website Greek Rank. The platform, which is not affiliated with the university but is used by many of its students, covered fraternity and sorority life on several campuses. One post from the commenter named Hamas was titled, "If I See Another Jew." Mr. Dye's parents told the New York Post that their son suffers from severe depression. He cannot control his emotion well due to the depression. Mr. Dye's father, who asked not to be named, told the newspaper in a text message, "No, I don't think he committed the crime. He told us he lost his life goal and motivation. As parents, we tried to give him more love." Mr. Dye's father said he and his wife lost communication with their son in the days before the arrest. They had attempted to contact him and said worried he might commit suicide. In a statement, Cornell University said, "We remain shocked by and condemn these horrific anti-Semitic threats and believe they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law." The university said the police will maintain a heightened security presence on campus in the coming days. Molly Goldstein, co-president of the Cornell Center for Jewish Living, told CNN, "Jewish students on campus right now are unbelievably terrified for their lives." The threats against Cornell's Jewish community came amid reports of rising anti-Semitic incidents around the country. Speaking to a congressional committee on Tuesday, FBI Director Christopher Wray told lawmakers that anti-Semitic abuse was reaching historic levels in the U.S. Our statistic will indicate that for a group that represents only about 2.4% of the American public, they account for something like 60% of all religious-based hate crimes, Mr. Wray of the Jewish Americans said. He noted that this figure had probably risen since the Israel-Gaza conflict erupted on 7th October.
Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said Wednesday he is sending the armed forces to boost security at some of the country's most important airports, ports and international borders as part of a renewed effort to tackle organized crime in Malaysia, America's largest nation. The decision comes days after members of a criminal gang set fire to dozens of buses in Rio de Janeiro, apparently in retaliation for the police slaying the leader's nephew. "We have reached a serious situation," Lewis said at a news conference in Brasilia after signing the decree. "So we have made a decision to have the federal government participate actively with all its potential to help state governments and Brazil itself to get rid of organized crime. Brazil will mobilize 3,600 members of the Army, Navy, and Air Force to increase patrols and monitor the international airport in Rio and Sao Paulo, as well as two maritime ports in Rio and Sao Paulo's Santos ports, the busiest in Latin America, and a major export hub for the deployment is part of a government's broader plan that includes increasing the number of federal police forces in Rio, improving cooperation between law enforcement entities, and boosting investment in state-of-the-art technology for intelligence gathering. State and federal authorities have said in recent weeks they want to suffocate militias by going after their financial resources. Rio's public security problems go back decades, and any federal crackdown on organized crime needs to be supported by a far-reaching plan, the fruit of which organized crime needs to be supported by a far-reaching plan, the fruits of which might only be 7 years from now, according to Rafael Alcadapani, a public security analyst and professor at the Getulio Vargas Foundation, a university in Sao Paulo. The federal government is being rushed into this due to previous lack of action, said Alcadapani. The government is trying, but the chance of this not working is huge. This is an emergency plan. Something being done last minute starts it were a problem that arose just now, but it isn't.
The Australian government says that 20 citizens who had registered with them left Gaza through the Rafah boarding crossing on Wednesday. Consular officials had contacted Australians ahead of the rumored border opening to tell them they were on a list to be allowed into Egypt and should try to make their way there. It is unclear how many got the message and were able to travel. Australia's Assistant Foreign Affairs Minister Tim Watt has told press that the government is aware of 65 Australians who are still in Gaza.
An Australian woman has been arrested over the suspected mushroom poisoning deaths of 3 people. The trio had fallen ill after attending a family lunch in the Victorian town of Leongatha in July. A 4th person was taken to hospital in a critical condition. The woman who served the lunch, Erin Patterson, was taken into custody on Thursday. She has not been charged. Miss Patterson, 49, has strongly maintained she is innocent. Victoria Police said the woman will be interviewed by detectives and a search warrant had been executed at her house. Homicide Squad Inspector Dean Thomas stressed the complexity of the case in a press conference, describing it as a tragedy